We are celebrating this year the 69th year of the Yom Haatzmaut celebration of the creation of the land of Israel. And what I'd like to share with you today is a certain perspective about how we should view the events that took place from that period of time up until now in a historical as well as in a Jewish theological, philosophical perspective. The Torah personality that I'm going to draw upon today is the famous Tanaic personality whose name was Rabbi Akiva. He was one of the greatest Torah sages we ever had. It was he who quite obviously made sure the Torah was communicated through his Talmidim, through his students, to the later generations. And if we have Torah that's vibrant on the level that we have it today, it was because of his specific activities as the head of the Torah community, as the Rosh Yeshiva, as the master analyzer of Torah mitzvahs. It's his energies that caused the Torah to be continued for all this time period up until now. Two of the interesting qualities that Rabbi Akiva had was one of a very, very penetrative mind. He was very analytical. You can see in the various Talmudic discussions how he used to analyze topics and the debates he had, and how brilliant he was in his perceptions and understanding of topics. But Rabbi Akiva had another quality, and that quality is termed in the parlance of many people, they called him the eternal optimist, which meant no matter what happened to him, no matter the situations and crises that confronted him, he always was able somehow to see the ultimate good. And his favorite expression, Gamzu Tov, this is also for the good, was a famous statement of Rabbi Akiva that was heard continuously mentioned by him throughout his life in the various Talmudic narratives. This Rabbi Akiva, therefore, was sought after by many people for his counsel, for his understanding. And as a result of that, you find continuously Rabbi Akiva being consulted by the other Gedolim, the other religious leaders of his generation, to give them perspective, not only when it comes to understanding halacha, but to understand the historical events that are taking place and the crises they're confronting, and to figure out how to interpret them in some type of positive light. One of the examples of this is the Gemara in Masechtas Makos, which I'm going to analyze with you today. Read you a story that the Gemara records of what happened when Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues took a trip to visit the destroyed temple after the Roman Empire destroyed it. And the way his colleagues reacted and the way he reacted is contrasted by the Gemara. Ultimately, the Gemara gives us a description of the message that he gave to his other colleagues for them to see what they didn't see and to understand on the level that he understood that they should find something positive from this rather than seeing purely negative. And let's go through the story and read the narrative inside and see exactly how the events took place. I gave out just one sheet for those who are interested in following along from a mimer that he has a story at the end of Masechtas Makos. I'm going to read it through, and for those who don't want to look inside, you're not going to have to look inside because I'm going to translate very quickly. But you have to hear the storyline of what took place to perceive what I'm going to teach you from this little piece. The Gemara tells us on the page in front of you, where you have the underlined lines on the right-hand side of the page, is that after Churban Bayis Sheni, Rabbi Akiva, together with Rav Gamaliel, Rav Elazar ben Azariah, and Rav Yeshua, took a tour of the Temple Mount that was destroyed by the Roman legions. And the Gemara tells us, Kevin Shagil Lahar Tzofim, when he came to Mount Scopus, we are able to see from a distance very closely what's going on in Har HaBayis. They saw the destruction, so they tore Kriya, they tore their clothing as a sign of mourning because of the destruction and tragedy of that destruction of the temple. The Gemara then continues. Came in Shagil Har HaBayis, when they came a little closer to the parts of Har HaBayis they were allowed to get close to. Ra'u, they saw a shuel sheyatz mebeis kachem. they saw a fox emanating from the location on the Temple Mount, that the Holy of Holies, the Holy and Holies, the most holiest part of the temple of the Beis HaMikdash was located. And logically, when you see such a calamity, such a tragedy, you start to cry. How can you not cry when you see the destruction of the most beautiful Beis HaMikdash that ever existed? On an ironic level, what was Rabbi Akiva's reaction? Mitzachek, he smiled. I'm not saying he laughed. Most Mepharshim say he smiled, not that he laughed. He smiled. So quite obviously, the fellow Tanoim said to him, Armulo, Rabbi Akiva, you see what's happening over here? We just took Kriya. You're smiling. So Amalem, he said to them, on the contrary, I want you to explain to me conceptually why you are crying. So Amrlo, so they said to him immediately, Makim shekasabo, hazah karav yumas, fa'achshav shulam hilchu bo v'lo nivkeh. We're standing and we're watching a location that people who are not authorized to be in the precincts of the Beis HaMikdash, I'm talking about Kohanim and Leviim, if they were not authorized to be there, they were not allowed to be there. They were chayav misa b'dei shemayim if they went unauthorized. And we now see wild animals desecrating the most holy place in the Beis HaMikdash, the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and we shouldn't be crying about this. So Amalahen, he therefore said, well, if you want to know why I'm not crying and I'm smiling, I want you to hear me out. And this is the drasha that Rabbi Akiva gave. He says, I want to quote you a prophecy from the prophet Yeshaya, from the prophet Isaiah. And in it, he makes the following statement. Va'idolach edim ne'amanim, es Uriah HaKohen, es Zechariah ben Yerechiyahu, that I want to quote, Yeshaya says, two major trustworthy prophets who were good witnesses. One is called Uriah HaKohen. The other one's name is the famous Navi Zechariah. And you'll ask the obvious question, what was the reason that Yeshaya HaNavi put two different personalities who lived in two different time periods together in the same pasuk? Yichma Inyan Uriah Eitzel Zechariah, Uriah b'mikdash Harishon, Zechariah b'mikdash Hasheni. Uriah lived in the first temple period, and he saw the first destruction. Zechariah lived in the second temple period. Ella, what's the reason Yeshaya put them together prophetically in a passage in Sefer Yeshaya? Ella Tala HaKasav Nuvavasa Shal Zechariah, B'Nuvavasa Shal Uriah. It means that for some reason, somehow, there is a connective link, there's an integration and an interdependence between the prophecy of Uriah and the prophecy of Zechariah. And what does that mean? Uriah's prophecy was, in Bayis Rishon, L'chein begalalachem tzion sada techaresh, that because of the iniquities of the Jewish people, not only will the Beis HaMikdash be destroyed, it will be plowed asunder, nothing will be left, even the foundation will be destroyed. That was the nevuah that Uriah gave. The Zechariah, when it comes to Zechariah's nevuah, it says in his nevuah, what is that? The nevuah is, O Yeshu Zekenim v'Zekenos b'Chovish Shleim. A time is going to come where old men and old women will be sitting in the open parks of Yerushalayim. And that was the nevuah. In fact, the pasuk continues. In fact, I wrote out the pasuk for you right underneath that in handwritten. It says, "They can be sitting b'Chovish Shleim. Ish mishanta biyado." Each person walking with their cane. Makes me feel guilty over here. And it says, "Of Yomim, how old they are." Rechovos bir yamalu yolodu yolodos nesachim rechovos, and boys and girls will be playing in the streets. So the obvious question is, why did Yeshaya HaNavi put together two different activities that are literally polar opposites? First, a description of Uriah HaKohen concerning the desolation and total destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And then the prophet Zechariah talking about the rebuilding of Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, and the parks, and old people, young people, children playing and feeling the simcha of living in Eretz Yisrael. Why did he put them both together in the same pasuk? So says Akiva the following statement. He says that Ajlan is kind of Asal Sha'uriya. Before I was able to personally see how desolate and how bad the destruction was of the Temple Mount, I was fearful that the prophecy of Zechariah will not take place. But now that I personally see with my eyes that the nevuah of destruction of Uriah has in fact taken place, I therefore feel a certainty that the nevuah of Zechariah of rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash, rebuilding Eretz Israel, will be miskayemes. Upon telling this to his other Tanoim friends, they said to him, Reb Kiva, nichamtanu, nichamtanu, you have given us consolation. And when you read this narrative, it's very dramatic, but the problem that is obvious when you look at this narrative is the following. What is the message that Rabbi Akiva at the end of the day is giving to the other Tanoim to make them feel better? I mean, the fact of the matter is he saw a total destroyed Beis HaMikdash, nothing left, and that total destruction made him feel good that one day you're going to have a magnificent new edifice being built there. The question is, where do you see that in the Psukim over here? Where do you see that interdependence mentioned in the Pasuk to give you any feeling that the ultimate destruction will bring ultimate rebuilding later on? True, you have the two prophecies not mentioned together, but you don't see how one really impacts upon the other, and by seeing one, he feels certain the other one's going to take place. But he did say something, we'll see what he said very shortly, to make everybody else feel good and not cry so much anymore. So the question is, what's really going on behind the scenes here? What I want to share with you, and I want to just say up front, that the gadol I'm using initially to interpret this is none other than the Volozhiner Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yosef Adov Alevi Soloveitchik, who happened to be the father of Rav Chaim and the great-grandfather of my Rabbi, Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal. He was one of the great Rosh Yeshivas, and perhaps one of the best, the most biggest, and most influential yeshiva in the entire European continent, in Volozhin. And when he saw this piece of Gemara, he didn't just interpret this in his Perish and Chumash, he had to go to his drashos, in his Shelos and Shuvas, to see what he does with this, which means he took this as a very serious piece. And what he said is the following. He says, what I want to explain to you is what was the perceptive eye of what Rabbi Akiva saw in the bigger picture that the other Tanaim didn't see. Because quite obviously they were looking at the immediate destruction and they were crying and tearing Kriya. Rabbi Akiva saw something in a broader perspective, according to his capacities, that made him see a different type of situation, which ultimately allowed him through that perspective to see this is another application of Gamzula Tova. But let me explain to you what Rabbi Akiva saw, and with it you'll come to an understanding of this Maimon Chazal and its application to contemporary events. The fact of the matter is, if you remember last year's drasha, and I'm not going to give you a opinion upon it, I mentioned the Bris Bein HaBesarim. And at that time I mentioned to you, there are four parts of that bris. One, that the Rebbeinu Shem promised Klal Yisrael indestructibility as a nation. He's our Magen, and all of the Jews will never ever be able to be taken away, will survive till the end of time. Number two, I taught you the second major principle is that Klal Yisrael's existence, either physically or geopolitically, will be a supernatural existence. Number three, I mentioned that the promise of beginning Eretz Israel and the land tracts that was involving those 10 different lands inhabited by the 10 Canaanite nations are mentioned by name in the Psukim and Parshas Lech Lecha, and that promise of you having exclusive rights, that it's a marasha to you, the same way Torah is a marasha to Klal Yisrael, it's our heritage, it's our unique inheritance. That concept of Eretz being exclusively for the Jews to the end of time was promised there as well. But there was a fourth promise, and that is the life of the Jew, of the Jewish nation, will be dependent upon one major factor. Are you going to observe Torah v'mitzvahs and be a God-fearing nation? Are you going to rebel against Torah v'mitzvahs and be a nation that could obviously rejects the Torah. The difference between those two types of behavior, according to the Bris Bein HaBesarim, is if you're a Shomer Torah v'Mitzvah nation, then you'll live a life of Geula, of redemption, with all the brachos that it contains. If you rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbeinu Shalom will pay you back, Midah Keneged Midah, and you'll ultimately be deprived of the beauty and the manifest spiritual and physical qualities of Eretz Israel and of your nationhood, and you'll be put in a state of galus, literally be put away in the diaspora for a certain period of time for the purposes of you reflecting on your sin, repenting to God, doing tshuva, and bettering yourselves to go back to your redemption mode. So redemption, as well as quite obviously going into a state of galus, geula, and galus, are really interrelated and connected. What state we're in will depend upon our religious observance. But one thing is for sure, whether we are in a geula mode or a galus mode, our connection to God is something that is permanent. We are the chosen nation. No other nation will ever be given that specific status. This is part of the Bris Bein HaBesarim. But how we'll conduct ourselves as the chosen nation will depend upon our spirituality. In the Bris Bein HaBesarim, therefore, we have a very interesting connection. And that is, Galus, Segula, and our relationship to Eretz Israel depends upon our spiritual stature. Now, if that's the case, when you look at the psukim quoted by Yeshaya Hanavi, Uri is Nevuah, and then the Nevuah of Zechariah, what you really have over here are two different prophecies showing Klal Yisrael's potential future existence. If we are sinful and we go into a galus mode, what's going to happen is Sion Ticharesh, your temple will be destroyed, you'll go into galus, and but obviously you're going to live a life devoid of the brachos the Torah mentioned. If Klal Yisrael are in a spiritual state worthy of redemption, then the brachos of Zechariah, of men and women living to very old age and children playing in the streets and rebuilding and being excited, living in Eretz Israel, will take place. So the nevuos of these two neviim, of Galus and Geula, are interconnected and related in this specific prophecy of Yeshaya. Now, what did Rabbi Kiva see from this interrelationship, and knowing about the Bris Bein HaBesarim and the eternity of the Jewish people, what did he see that allowed him to have a smile upon seeing the destruction of the temple itself? So listen very carefully. Says the Beis HaLevi, he asked the following question. I understand the Jewish people, if they sin and they're not deserving of God's blessings, to be deprived the privilege of living in Eretz Israel, in that holy place. They go into Golis, they go into the diaspora, and they have time for spiritual reflection. I understand that. But why is it that the Torah says that if, in fact, they sin and they are forced to go into Golis, not only are they going to go into Golis, but what's going to happen is all the institutions they built, including the temple, will be totally obliterated and destroyed. Not only will there be obliteration and destruction of the physical temple, but the psukim in the Tanakh, where that pasuk is taken from, talks about a total desolation, destruction of all the vegetative qualities of Eretz Israel. It will become a place that is simply uninhabitable. You won't be able to live there. You won't be able to survive in a land that's full of shmama. That's what that pasuk is telling you. So not only are they going to be kicked out of the land, but all their institutions, buildings, Beis HaMikdash, and even the agricultural, the Eretz Avaskal Davash, it will cease to exist. You won't be able to survive in the environment of Eretz Israel. Now there's another pasuk I want to mention to flavor this up. In the sheets, if you have the sheets in front of you, there's a little box over here that has one little more pasuk, which comes from the Tochacha in Pashas Bechuk Kosai. At the end of the Tocha, the Rebbeinu Shalom says that if Klal Yisrael sins and are kicked out of Eretz Israel, Hashimosi es haaretz, I'm going to cause the land to be desolate. So this builds on the theme I just mentioned. And not only that, Not only will the land be desolate for you, the Jewish people, it will be desolate for any other nation, any other adversary that might be big and powerful. If they try to come to displace you and use Eretz Israel for their own annex of their national existence, and try to agriculturally develop it and technologically, use all the stuff they do at home, and try to export that and use that in Israel, it's going to be a dismal failure. They will find the land as shmama, as desolate as you would find it if you remain there, because of your galus mode. Nobody's going to have pleasure whatsoever from Eretz Israel when you are in a state of galus. So what's interesting is the Ramban in Chumash on this pasuk Buchu Kosai says this is contained in the Tochacha. The Tochacha is a terrible parsha. You read the Tochacha, you start getting scared how bad galus can be, how punitive it could be. The Ramban says upon this pasuk, and I'm going to quote you. You don't have it in front of you, but I'm going to quote you. The Ramban says on this pasuk that I want you to know something. This statement that the land of Eretz Israel is going to undergo all types of desolation if you're in a gullus mode, and that your adversaries will find it desolate as well, Bisura Tova. That's not a bad tiding. That is a good tiding. Mivaseres Bechol HaGolios, it tells us that any time in the future, if God forbid Klal Yisrael sins and they are momentarily kicked out of the land of Israel, Ein Artseinu Mekabelos Oyevenu, Eretz Israel will not be hospitable to any of the adversaries of the Jewish people. And the fact of the matter is, he then says, Kimi Oz Yatsu Mimenu. The Ramban says historically, he said this in about 1267, from the time that we have been kicked out of the land of Israel and from the Beis HaMikdash, Kimi Oz Yatsu Mimenu, Lo Kibel Umav some of the greatest empires, whether it was the Babylonian Empire, then the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Turks and the Arabs, they've tried to settle the land in lieu of the Jews. They tried to establish this as their own homeland, or an annex to the homeland. And what has happened, and what has been demonstrated, Kula Mishtadan L'Hoshiva, all tried to do this, Ein Le'al Yadam, nobody has ever succeeded. So says the Ramban, a very important principle, which is not his, but is the Sifra he is paraphrasing. That as bad as Galus is, and as terrible as it might be, and all the horrors involved in Galus, there is a little silver lining in the Klalos. And that is, if you're deprived of living in Eretz Israel, and it doesn't function as an Eretz Avas Chalav Davash, and it's Shmama, if any major empire tries to take it over, import its technology and develop this as part of their country, they will suffer dismal failure, they will not succeed. It will be as unhospitable to them, as it is basically to you, which means to say, nobody will survive in that environment. So the question is, what does that mean? What does that mean? It comes among Rabbi Kiva. And Rabbi Kiva says, you know what that means? That means that the Rebbe Hashem wants to tell us that when I made you my Am HaNivcha, my chosen nation, and I gave you Eretz Yisrael as the chosen place for you to live because of the intimacy of God's divine essence being there on a higher, more powerful level of divine providence in Eretz Yisrael than outside Eretz Yisrael. In Hashem Elokecha, there's more divine presence, more kedusha, more holiness. And there's a physical ramification and a spiritual ramification. I gave it to you for your benefit. If you're there and you're worthy for that benefit, Israel will produce for you spiritually and physically. If God forbid you are forced to leave Eretz Yisrael because of sins and you go from a gul to a gullus mode, the land will shut off all of those capacities. But not only you'll be denied those capacities, any other nation that tries to resettle the land instead of you and to develop it, I, as God, will make sure it will be dismally unsuccessful, dismal failure. And the reason is the following. Because one day we're going to go back to a geula mode. If another country would take over the land of Israel in our absence, and they're able to successfully build it as an annex to their specific kingdom, Rome, or for instance, any other major empire, if we are Zocha, and we have a schus of coming back to Eretz Israel and have a Gula, what would we have to do to fight wars and do all different types of things to try to uproot them and take back our homeland? It would be almost a mission impossible. The fact that Eretz Israel is desolate and made desolate for everybody is an insurance policy that when the time for the Jews to return takes place, and you go from Golus to Geula, you're going to find an empty, barren place that's going to be welcoming you because nobody else wants to live there, nobody else can survive there. Easy to come back, easy to rebuild, easy to establish a Jewish homeland. So the Shemama to the Goyim is a bracha to us. It's a Besura Taiva. Comes Rabbi Akiva, and he says the following. If that's the case, total destruction momentarily is a guarantee to ultimate future return and rebuilding. So the narrative of Zachar of rebuilding and replenishing, come back to Eretz Israel, is possible because of the total destruction mentioned by Uriah. I'm not going to give you a tangible example. During the Second Temple period, which they were talking about, we know that Herod Hordis built the most magnificent Beis Hamikdash edifice that was ever built. The Gemaras in Baba Basra and Sukkah describe that the architecture used in building this temple, the materials, the types of marbles, the silver, the gold, were the finest and the best. It was the most incredible architectural building for God contained in the entire universe. We would expect that the Roman Empire, if they want to get rid of the Jews, want to put us in Gullus, what logically they should have done is got rid of us, killed us, Rahman al-Islam, or thrown us out of the country. But they would have taken that magnificent temple and made it into one of the most magnificent pagan temples on the face of this earth. It was ready. Mukhani Mazumi, just put in your altars, put in your gods, and use it. So you got rid of the Jews, and now you're using their resources for your benefit. What did they do? Not only did they kick us out and get rid of us, but they took the most incredible asset we possessed. Not only did they just set it afire and destroy it, they will cherish it to the point they destroyed the entire infrastructure and the foundation. There was nothing left. So not only we weren't there to use it, but there was nothing left for them to benefit them as well. That, on a logical level, runs against human nature. Human nature wants to preserve what's beneficial for them, get rid of what you don't need. So Rabbi Akiva says, what do we see from this? That the way that they got rid of the Jews from Jerusalem are not only getting us out of there, but destroying the building, destroying the structure, and everything else. It shows you a kiyum of the klala, that everything became desolate. The fact that Tzion Techaresh, that they literally destroy it, meant not only is it Shmama for the Jews, but it's Shmama even for the Roman Empire. They never succeeded there. And what was the ultimate Besura Tov for him? If God put that in their mind to be so crazy, to do what they did and destroy it, that means God is sending us a subliminal message. This galus, this destruction is momentary. I'm going to make sure nobody can use it. You're going to do tshuva one day, there's going to be gula and redemption, you're going to come back, and the Roman Empire won't be in control because they're not going to want to live there. They're not going to find any agricultural benefit, any physical benefit. They're going to basically leave the land and basically not develop it any further. In Rabbi Akiva's mind, therefore, what therefore made him smile was the fact that there's an interdependence between Galus and Geula. When he saw the level of Galus and the physical destruction of something that benefits them, and the kiyum of the pasuk Shemalech Yoshvim Ba, he therefore realized that Geula is around the corner. That's what Yeshai did in combining the pasuk of Zechariah of Geula with the pasuk of destruction of Uriah. When you see how far they go to destroy, that's a simon God saving you for the future, and your redemption is going to take place. That's why he was smiling. And that's the message he gave. As bad as it is, the fact that God destroyed it on this level and made them do it themselves is a message to us that we do tshuva and we do what we have to do, we'll have the rebuilding take place. What's interesting is These psukim were initially said concerning Bayis Rishon going to Bayis Sheni. The Nevuah of Uriel was talking about the destruction of the first temple. The Zechariah's Nevuah was talking about the rebuilding of the second temple. Rabbi Kiva said, I wasn't sure whether that was a one-time occurrence or not. Now that I see that the second temple has gone through the same type of physical desecration that the first one did, it shows me the same way we saw that the desecration of the first temple was rebuilt with the second temple. It teaches me now that the desecration of the second temple will be rebuilt with the creation of the third temple. So therefore, that was the message of Nechama that he basically gave. This was a Gamzula Tova, as crazy as it might sound. But what I see over here is God's hand behind the scenes working out miracles over here, even though they seem to be destructive for the ultimate benefit of the Jewish people. I want to tell you a story. This is a thing that happened at the end of the Second Temple period. There's nobody in this room that's old enough to remember it personally, that's for sure. But there's something we do remember that did happen that everybody in this room saw. I'm going back a couple of years to what happened in the Gaza Strip in Gush Katif. Before that specific area was vacated by Sharon, against any kind of logic, and I'm sure everybody seeing in this room, if you watch what I watched on television at the time, seeing those Jews being pulled out, I'm sure there's nobody here that had a dry eye. You must have been crying and feeling the pain and anguish. It's simply incredible. Historically, 5 years before that happened, I was part of a group of 10 Rabbanim that was asked to go by One Israel to Eretz Israel, specifically to Gush Katif, and to go to those communities as a group of 10 Rabbanim representing American Jewry, to give them chizuk, we're with you, despite the fact you have to live in shelters from time to time and bombs are coming all around. They wanted us to come to show we're as brave as you are, we were with you, and therefore don't think American Jewry has forgotten to you. So I will never forget that trip. The Israeli Army gave us incredible protection, but it was a dangerous trip. We were taken to every community in Gush Katif. We saw all the beautiful shuls, magnificent yeshivas, the beautiful homes they built, the billion-dollar industry of agricultural production, the hydroponics, of what they were able to create billions of dollars worth of economy, and the thousands of Arabs that were being employed and given parnasa from this. If you remember, the last Jew that was removed from Gush Katif and Gaza Strip, within 24 hours, there wasn't anything left in the Gaza Strip. Every building was torn apart. Every synagogue that could have been made into a mosque was totally demolished. Every part of the technological, agricultural empire that was built, instead of taking it, using this as a resource of income and building a Palestinian economy on a level they never dreamt, they destroyed it with their hands and they were left with nothing. When I saw that happening, I said to myself, this is Rabbi Akiva's drasha. And that is, God put it in their crazy minds. The same way the second temple and the first temple were destroyed by the Babylonians, the Romans, to their detriment, as a sign to us, you Jews are going to return here one day. The Rebbeinu Shem sent us a little message. And that message is that you might have to give this up momentarily, but the fact that they're destroying the entire infrastructure is a sign that they're going to find it shmama for them, and that means one day you're going to return, rebuild it, and it's going to be once again yours. This pattern in history, according to Chazal, is what Rabbi Akiva saw, what he taught his fellow Tanoim. What I just told you now, you experienced with your own eyes and saw what I mean by this. But the fact of the matter is, the deeper message and the application to Yom Haatzmaut is the following. How do we know we're in a Galus mode and a Gula mode when it comes to Eretz Israel? So the great Gedolim who deal with this topic say, Rabbi Akiva just taught you this. When Klal Yisrael are in a Gula mode, they're in Eretz Israel, and Eretz Israel is an Eretz of Askala V'Davash. It's flourishing, they're enjoying the environment, they're having Hanoah, they're physically, spiritually. That is Geula. What is Galus? Total desecration, total desolation. We don't have any pleasure from Eretz Israel. Nobody else has pleasure. Total Galus is total destruction and dysfunctionality of Eretz Israel. Said the Gedolah on this, upon Rabbi Akiva, the following. If that's the case, when you go from a mode of total desecration and dissolution and total dysfunctionality in Eretz Israel to Eretz, all of a sudden being able to be developed and farmland is being made out of swamps, that's an indication we're going back from a Gullus mode to a Geula mode. The question everybody asks is, why did the Vilna Gaon have all of his Talmidim leave Europe and make Aliyah to Eretz when he made it in the 1700s? Why did the Baal Shem Tov do the same exact thing? The answer is that up until that point in time, Eretz was in a state of gullus, desolation, agricultural production there was almost impossible. There was swamps, there was disease. In the time of the Vilna Gaon, he started to see Yechidim of Jews going there, and all of a sudden making the swamps into fertile farmland. He saw the mode of gullus slowly but surely undergoing a metamorphosis to a concept of Gula of redemption. He smelled the agricultural revolution about to take place. He told his Talmidim to go to Eretz not merely just to make shuls and schools in his name, which we have, but to rebuild the physical land and to start farming the land and once again making it an agricultural wonder. From that point on, 1700s, 1800s, the Netziv, at that time when he was the head of the Volozhin Yeshiva, asked people to gather money to help continue funding the different types of yeshuvim who are agriculturally developing the land, because they saw we were now entering into a geula mode. We are basically have left a gullus mode. What is interesting and fascinating is that when they asked Rav Kook Zatzal, how do you know we're in geula now and it's not gullus? He says, I have one simple raya. The raya is Eretz has become once again Eretz Avas Chalav Davash. Look at its agriculture, look at its technology, look at its industries, it's flourishing. If it was in gullus mode, it would be in a state of shemama. That's what the Torah says. And the Torah says when it's in shemama, it's in gullus mode. When it's flourishing in all of these types of levels I just mentioned, that's the siman of geula. Now this is not just a dream and a good pshat of Rav Kook. But there's another Gemara, I photostat, but you can look it up yourself. You want to make a notation on page Tzadiches, 98a in Masechta Sanhedrin, where one of the Gedolim Roim asked the question, what's the proof of a Kates Megula, of an ultimate redemption taking place? Give me a siman that you know a redemption is about to take place. So he quotes in the Gemara a pasuk from Sefer Yecheskel that talks about redemption. He says, when the Hari Yisrael, Anavcham Titenu, when you see all of a sudden the trees growing again, Upirachim Tislam Yisrael, and there will be fruits and vegetables growing from the ground, when you see the vegetative qualities of Eretz Yisrael returning, so he says, Ein Locha Kates Megula, and Rashi says, what does it mean? When Eretz Yisrael becomes once again a place of Piria Be'ayin Yafeh, it means the end of time has come. There's no greater raya that the gates of redemption has begun. So Rav Kook's statement wasn't his own personal ha'ara, but it was a Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin that says that's the ultimate determination. The fact of the matter is that if you look at Eretz Yisrael today, and you look at what Eretz Yisrael has become, there's no other way of describing it but being a miracle of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is beyond comprehension itself. The fact of the matter is that the nations of the world ever came together, first by the League of Nations, led by the UN, to give an approval to create a Jewish homeland. When you look at their positions today, is almost impossible to comprehend. Rav Soloveitchik always says that's probably one of the biggest miracles we ever saw, that the hateful UN, that 99% of all of its basic discussions are basically telling how Eretz Yisrael is the worst nation on the face of this earth. This is the body that created it, number one. Number two, it's the first time the United States and Russia ever voted together on the same side of the table. Number three, I don't know if I told you this last time around, but where Truman was going to be convinced by the State Department to retract from voting on behalf of the vote to Eretz Yisrael and the partition plan, and the State Department, who were Arabists then, and still Arabists now, tried to basically make him feel it's not worth your while. The fact is, who stopped the United States from pulling out was none other than Stalin and the Kremlin and Gromyko, who were told, don't let America pull out. We're going to keep the promise to Israel that they should have a Jewish home. I mean, that alone is incomprehensible. But as we go further over here, what is interesting and fascinating is that when people go to Eretz Yisrael today, and there are problems, we have problems, but the fact of the matter is, Eretz Yisrael in the world today is perhaps one of the most successful countries economically, number one. Number two, when it comes to military power, its military power is looked upon as number two compared to America. Everybody is fearful of Eretz Yisrael. For those who are familiar with biblical narratives, when Israel's in a state of galus, we are fearful from everybody and we don't feel any protective ability to defend ourselves. When we're in a state of a geula mode, everybody fears us and runs in all directions, even though they outnumber us. If our army, our resources are feared by the world, if you now have a Saudi Arabia and a Qatar and an Egypt and a Jordan depending upon the Israeli military to save them from ISIS and other threats, we're in a different world today. This doesn't happen by itself. This is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He has changed the situation from a Golus mode to a Geula mode. The fact of the matter is, the next times you go to Eretz Yisrael and you go to Yerushalayim, look at the beautiful parks. And look at the Zakeno sitting there and growing old, Baruch Hashem, peacefully, and the children playing in the streets. How many of us look upon that as a siman of Gula, of redemption? But the fact is, the simanim are surrounding us from all directions. The fact of the matter is that in 69 years, Eretz Yisrael has done and accomplished what many nations haven't done for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And the only way to explain this is not based upon the fact we have great politicians. It's not based upon the fact we just have great technology, but there's a Rebbeinu Shalom behind the scene who's pulling strings, who promised us the redemption. And as I mentioned, going back a year ago, there are two types of redemptions. We can be Zoch or not Zoch. If we're Zoch, everything will be miraculous like Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we'll have tremendous miracles. If we're not Zocha, we'll be like Ani Rech Ramar, we'll be ups and downs. Sometimes we'll succeed, sometimes we won't, but we'll go forward, and the redemptive process is going to take place. The Yom Haatzmaut we're celebrating today demonstrates Israel in a geula mode on a very, very high level. In fact, we were figured enough, we're so smart to figure that the economy is not even based upon agriculture anymore. You know, when it's agriculture, you can boycott agriculture, but you can't boycott technology. And if you remember, a number of years ago, when Netanyahu was giving a drasha, a speech in the UN, he said to all the wonderful, loving anti-Semites in the audience, he said to them one thing, that if you don't like Israel and you don't appreciate all the good stuff we're doing for you, and therefore don't want to benefit for anything that we are basically doing on behalf of you, I would suggest that all of you take your cell phones and basically throw it into the garbage, because every one of them has a Pentium chip produced in the Intel in Eretz Yisrael. So the fact of the matter is, you want our technology, you want our medicine, you want our brilliance in helping cure sick people by you that your hospitals can't take care of, but publicly you want to basically make fun of us. The fact of the matter is, Tamidos and Tamidim, I want to make the following statement. And this, I'm not doing this because of politics. I'm doing this because of a Gemara we did in Baba Basra a couple of days ago. The Gemara in Baba Basra, for those who Daf Yomi, you can say that every appointment that takes place in this world, anytime you're raised to a position of authority, God's behind the scenes pushing the buttons for certain reasons. Even a person who's in charge of a well, determining which person waters from the well that day, is God's appointment. Does anybody think that who is the President of the United States is God's divine decision? The fact of the matter is, whether you voted for Trump or didn't vote for Trump, you're now saying in retrospect, a bracha to Hashem, that you have a president. If you heard the drush he gave at the World Jewish Congress a couple of days ago, or you heard his APEC drasha, or the drush he gave about Eretz Yisrael last week, you hear what this man said. And you see the person he put as his ambassador, of the United States to the UN, who was shaking up the entire institution and telling them, if you keep on putting down Eretz Israel, we're cutting away all the funds, which will make the UN bankrupt. The three people that he put in charge of the discussion of making an Arab and Jewish peace deal are really three yeshiva boys who have given a great deal of their monies to rebuilding the West Bank. I mean, what's going on is simply incredible. For people to think this is an accident and not the Yad HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something is not working up here when it comes to your mind. The fact of the matter is, this specific Yom Haatzmaut, we have perhaps the most positive administration in the United States that is pro-Eretz we ever had before, and we have a group of people that have told Abbas that if you continue supporting terrorism and rewarding their families with millions of dollars, 300 million, for killing people, we're cutting off all the funds. No president in the United States have had the guts to do that before or even make that. We're living in a gula mode. But I hate to say it, because of the ups and downs, it seems to be a low zachu rather than a zachu, but we're heading in the right direction. If we have to be b'simcha, we have to be b'simcha, and we have to see what Rabbi Akiva said. Rabbi Akiva was able to see Gamzula Tova, even though there's churban and there's destruction. When they can't have hana and we can't have hana, that means it's being safe for the Jews. And Baruch Hashem, we're benefiting from that now after thousands of years of Jewish history. We're experiencing a Yom Haatzmaut that literally is going to lead even to greater heights. People are emigrating from all over the world out to Eretz Israel. Who knows if one of the reasons ISIS was created is to get the Jews to pick themselves up from Golis and everybody should run to Eretz Israel. We don't know how God works. But one thing is for sure, Eretz Israel's population has grown over 1,000 times from the time that it was founded. And the fact is, it's a strong nation, military, economically. The amount of Torah being learned in Eretz Israel, the amount of boys and girls learning yeshivas and seminaries are on a level that Baruch Wein said would never exist in Jewish history before. This is a bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And with all the difficulties, it's a bracha. You have to thank the Rabbanu Shalom with Shevet V'Haidaya and say to you, thank you, Rabbanu Shalom, for allowing our generation to see something that our Bubbas and Zaydas were chalash in Halavad should be able to see, to go from a Holocaust mode to be Eretz Israel and be one of the most feared, respected people on the face of this earth, whether they want to admit it or not, can only be the Yad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's give praise and hodot to Hashem. Realize we have to be eternal optimists as Rabbi Akiva was. See everything that's happening, Gamzula Tova. And I hope and pray next year, if you invite me to speak, it should be in Yerushalayim with Biz Mashiach Tzidkenu. Amen.
Amen.